So welcome everybody to A Life Less Serious, our book launch event. It's really great for you to join us this evening. And I'm George. I'm sort of the person who came up with this crazy idea for this book. And I'll tell you a bit more about that, and then I'll introduce you to some of our amazing contributors. So if everyone can mute themselves apart from the speakers, that would be amazing. Thank you. So yeah, I'm George. I'm a project manager at a national charity in the UK, and I've got 2 young kids. And while I was furloughed from my job, and I'll be honest, reluctantly homeschooling my kids in lockdown, I remember I was in the park with the kids, and I was kind of hiding in my phone, looking at all the WhatsApp messages from all the other mums who were parents who were kind of panicking about homeschooling, and I really was kind of not really present to my kids or the beauty. And it was a really sunny day, and I remember I really wasn't present to it. I was just in my head about everything. And then I heard, I'm going to read from the book because I think it's best to do that. I heard a talk, a talk by this really inspirational lady. So then in April 2020, I had the opportunity to hear a talk by an inspiring African-American woman. I'm going to read it from the book because I've been very careful to try and use her words, and I just want to say it as I wrote it. So I'd heard a talk from an African-American woman whose teenage son had been mistakenly stopped by police on the way to school and handcuffed for 30 minutes while they were on the lookout for a suspect in the local area. It had really affected him in ways she was concerned would impact how he would react in the future if something like this happened again. She was very upset by this because she could see that what had happened had taken something away from her son's value as a person. So he felt like he was now the typical young black male statistic. But instead of saying bothered by this, she went beyond her serious thinking, and she was able to interpret what had happened as an unfortunate, innocent situation. She phoned up the police station and reached out to them. She explained to the police what had happened and told them she needed them to come round to her house to talk to her son, as she didn't want it to be that the next time he came into contact with them, he would act out of fear without clear judgment because he felt like he was being attacked or they were messing with him. So the police came round, and together they were able to diffuse the situation, and her son was better able to understand that it was the system and not personal. And that story had a really big impact on me because I saw in it the power of going beyond our serious thinking and what impact that could have in the world. And if that mother could be in touch with her wisdom in such difficult circumstances and do that, what would be possible in the world if more of us were able to see fresh ways of dealing powerfully with life from a place of wisdom and insight rather than a place of fear and habitual thinking? And it really spoke to me. And because I've been in this beautiful wellbeing community for 12 years, and because I actually organised one of the first innate 3 principles conferences in the country, and that's another funny story which I might share. But I'm very well connected in that community, and I know lots of amazing people who have stories to tell where they've seen beyond their serious circumstances. And I just thought it'd be a real gift to the world with everything going on with climate change and everything else going on in the world, if we could find a way to share those stories. So that's what I set out to do while juggling my work and kids. And 2 years later, here we are. So it's really great to have you here tonight. And I'm going to introduce our lovely panel, and then we'll all talk about what living a life less serious means to us, and also a little bit about what we've put in the book, and have a bit of a conversation. And if you want to ask questions after, you can. So with that, I will start. So I've got with me Sue, who I've known, I think, the longest here, and Sue Pankiewicz, or Coltman as she's put down, is a 3 principles and a health coach who's really been working in this for a very, very long time, and hosted many amazing inspirational events and gatherings and very social and happy spaces. And she's also a mentor in the 3 principles community, but she also does lots of other incredible things as well. And then we've got Jan Armstrong, who actually Sue introduced me to. In fact, it was very funny, just as a background to this, that I started off with an idea of who I would invite to do the book. And then it was really interesting because as I had conversations with people, they said, oh, what about this person? What about that? And it really led itself, actually, and until it became very, it just what felt right. I just had the conversations, and I really could have. I enjoyed the conversations so much that I could have carried on having them forever. But Carol Burrows, who very kindly co-edited the book with me, and Lucy, who I met along the way, Sheffield, who also did it with me, they said, George, you've had enough conversations. You need to stop. So I listened, and I did. So Jan is one of the people that I was introduced to, and she's a poet and a writer, and she's written some beautiful books and poetry, and she's got a very special story to share with you tonight. And Juliet, I think I met during lockdown, actually, because she was holding some very beautiful, calm spaces. And I think there were quite a few parents on there like us coming and joining her for a bit of peace at the end of an evening during lockdown. And she's also a coach, and she lives in Carmarthenshire, and she specialises in dealing with loss and creativity, but she also does lots of other incredible things in her life and has lots of other interests as well. And she also has lots of beautiful stories to tell. So I'm really honoured to have all of you here, and there is one of our contributors listening from Greenland very kindly, but she'll chip in if she can, but she's driving at the moment, but she's with us as well in spirit and on the line as much as she can. So I'll start with Juliet. If that's all right with you, since you're sort of sitting next to me in the virtual room that we're in. So Juliet, do you want to say a bit about what you wrote about and what A Life Less Serious means to you?
Oh, thank you, George. I'm really happy to be here with all of you. And we were just talking before we came on about how excited we all are by this collection of stories, that they're just amazing. And every time we read them, and I just get more, I'm very touched by the collection. So if you haven't got hold of your copy yet, I really encourage you to get yourself a copy and read it. It's a book to just keep dipping into. So yes, George asked me, I was delighted to be asked to contribute. And then as I say at the beginning of my chapter, it was hilarious, really. I got into overthinking and seriousness about what I was going to write about. And initially, I sort of thought, well, I could write about seriousness across so many topics, work, relationships, food, exercise, social activism, money, all sorts of things. And I kept going round and round, and George was incredibly patient with me because we had a couple of conversations, and I said, well, I could write about this, I could write about that. And none of it was really landing for me. And then it was funny how it sort of all came about, because I realized there was one area of my life that had never been serious. And I thought, maybe I'll write about that. And it was travel. So my chapter's called The Gift of Travel. And I had so much fun writing it because first I got the chance to sort of review all the travel I'd done in my life, going right back from when I was sort of 13, 14. And it was just a glorious sort of reminiscing for me. And I realized, wow, when I travel, I I'm in this space of sort of curiosity, and everything feels delightful. Problems, with tickets and transport and all sorts of things never really seemed to deter me. And as I was writing the chapter, it became apparent to me that I thought that wonderful feeling that I got from travel came with a ticket, whether it was train or plane or bus, and that it was the traveling, that gave me this wonderful feeling, because I would show up in different countries where I didn't speak the language and never been there before, and I would be sort of fascinated by everything, and the newness of everything I just felt so alive. And then when I'd go back to the UK, I felt quite affectionate towards my hometown and things, but I couldn't wait to go off on the next trip. And through my life, I've been very, very fortunate and got the chance to travel in all sorts of different ways with different people on my own. When I've had money, when I haven't had money, traveled to near places, far places, lived overseas. And it was during the lockdown, I think, that I began, obviously couldn't travel, I began to sort of reflecting on this for George's book and the chapter. I realized the simple difference really between those experiences and other times in my life when seriousness plagued me for years in other parts of my life, to the extent that I and those around me suffered enormously. And actually that the difference came down to something very simple, which I'd overlooked, which was I didn't have a lot of thinking when I was traveling. I really didn't have very much on my mind. And I used to almost feel like a different person when I was traveling. And as I realized then that it wasn't in the ticket, that actually that's possible anywhere. It's just that all my life I had thought it was only available when I traveled. So it was beautiful to write the chapter and just realize that that really was the only difference between the years of struggle and the freedom I felt when I was traveling, was how much thinking I had on my mind that looked true. So thank you, George, for asking me to write the chapter. It was an absolute joy to write it. And I think this is an amazing book to read, to share, to give to people you love. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Juliet. And what you wrote was just so beautiful and uplifting. And I really resonate with what you say, because I was thinking about the categories we put into, you know, what we have to be serious about and not. And in my chapter I wrote about my work life, and it was really funny how outside of work I would do things like, you know, be a co-chair of a big festival or something as a volunteer and have nothing on it and just enjoy every moment. But in work it was like, it's a very different experience, and I couldn't understand why these volunteer roles were so easy compared to my job. And I guess it was how I related to them, but that never, I mean, it's probably only just clicking with me now. Actually, it's quite funny how we still have these categories. So I can really relate to what you're saying. So thank you. And I'm sure a lot of people listening with them will have a discussion at the end. Now, I meant to mention that Kate Dalgiesh was joining us, and she's actually joined us. So I'm going to spotlight her now. She was running slightly late, so she's apologies for that. So I'm going to spotlight her now, and I'm going to introduce her as well. But I'll let her settle down before we go to Kate. I was another person like Jan I was introduced to by another contributor called Jenny Ellery, who I also know very, very well. And she'll share with you, she'd had a really powerful experience with her daughter, and now she shares that with people, and she was a real powerhouse in sharing what she's seen for her family, but also for other people. So it was a real pleasure to have her as part of the book. And I think she had a similar experience to you, Juliet, because in the front of her she also had serious thinking about what she was going to write about before she wrote. It's quite funny, isn't it, how we all sort of got in our heads before we actually started writing. So maybe she'll share that as well. We're all outing ourselves as serious thinkers, aren't we, tonight? So but I'll let her settle down, and maybe Jan, would you like to go next and share what you talked about and what you sort of see about this? Oh, you're still muted.
Okay, done it. Yes. Right. Well, what I wrote about fundamentally was about the power of thought. You know, because until I came upon this piece of information in 2008, and I was pretty ancient by then. It had never crossed my tiny mind in all those years that it was completely news to me. that the world wasn't just throwing stuff at me all the time, and there was nothing I could do about it. And that was huge. And it's just such a, you can say it in one sentence or one phrase, you know, that thought creates your reality. It seems so short and so simple, and it is, but it's also, the implications are infinite. And so there's the power that it gives you, which of course isn't as easy as it sounds. It comes and goes, and then there's all the sort of ripples that it creates in your life and in your awareness. And I become so much more gradually, I have to say. I'm not been someone who's had great big insights. It's been a drip for me, but except the very beginning, you know, that there is nothing there. The world is, obviously, the world of form is as it is. There's stuff everywhere, and events everywhere, but what I do with them, that's what I didn't know. What I do with them is entirely up to me. And the tragedy of so many people in the world not knowing it is quite overwhelming sometimes, but there's nothing you can do about that much. You know, there's doing it myself, but it comes and goes, and I get completely drawn into, I'm very good at seeing that other people don't know about it, you know, and like, I can forgive people more easily because I know they don't understand. But I also get very cross with them, you know, some days one thing, some days the other, for not knowing it. But it's just a starting point, and that's what my starting point was. And that can go off in any direction, and you find it's still really about that. And as far as this book goes, because, like, I just read it today again, and I have a big thing that goes on in my life, which is difficulty with my son, a never-ending problematic relationship, and I get so sucked into the story, my story, his story, and reading these chapters pulls me back into remembering, not to drown in the story, and that all the different aspects in everyone's story there applies to me and pulls me back out. And I'm really grateful for it, because I can't hold on to it all the time. You know, when I sort of sink into emotional, habitual behavior, my behavior, his behavior, and these stories, I've pulled me out of them, of that terribly serious, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? This has gone on forever. This is going to go on forever. I can't fix it. This is an idea. I'll ring somebody up about this, that, and the other. You know, and I do behave badly. You know, I try to make him be and behave how I want him to, even though I know I shouldn't, and I forget. And the stories, I think perhaps they should be prescribed, you know, and it should be compulsory to read one every day, or every time you've behaved badly or something. Perhaps the doctors could prescribe them, but it's wonderful, and I like all the different voices very much, you know. Yeah, it's great. I've enjoyed it. It's only just sort of coming home to me what we did, you know. I didn't really, you know, I wrote a blog for a couple of years, and that was a piece every fortnight, and it didn't really occur to me that this was any different, that this bit of blog was going to go in this direction and join up with other ones and create something. So I'm sort of surprised and very chuffed about it. It's lovely. So thank you, George. Well done.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you, Jan, for sharing your really very powerful story and also sharing your reflections on your story and your life with us today. And I'm sure lots of people can relate to what you were saying. I definitely can, and because we're all constantly in and out of our serious thinking about things and getting caught up and then not, and then constantly in and out all the time, all day, or every day. And I think the beauty of this is to see that our circumstances don't have to have us in the same way that they used to. We can just have experiences and they don't have to have us. And I guess that's something I've learned. And I don't think we're teaching anything new. It's something we all know. We just kind of, all of us know, all of us here know, and all of you listening know what we're alluding to. We just forget and remember and forget or remember. And I guess what the book gives context to is just giving voice to that remembrance. I guess I don't know how else to say it really, but that's what occurs to me to say. And I'm sure the others will build on what I've said when we have the discussion. So thank you so much. So Kate, I'm going to turn to you now, if that's okay, and you can, if you're happy to share a bit about what you wrote about and what a life less serious means to you.
Am I unmuted? Yeah.
You are. Thank you.
Deep breath. I've just been running around picking up children, but for me, this has just changed everything for me. My whole life has just done a massive flip from living outside in to living inside out. And like you said, it's funny that we don't see this. It's funny, I never saw this before, and I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't looking for any of this. I wasn't searching. I wasn't really interested. I thought I was fine. And then my daughter, she's now 16, it's my middle child, she started to, probably about 11, she started to struggle with anxiety. And I took it so seriously. And actually everyone around me took it very seriously as well. And what we all did was we all looked at the anxiety, and we looked at the behavior, and we looked at the feelings, and everyone was looking in the wrong direction. And it was like Georgia was there going, hello, I'm here. But everyone was going, shh, Georgia, we need to look at this problem. We need to look at the anxiety. We need to fix you. And I think that, we went and had CBT, and we went and had counseling. And every time Georgia was like, everything about it didn't make any sense to her. And I'm grateful for that. But while I was in that, it was terrifying, because it was like, well, then what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Because nothing is making sense to her, and nothing is making sense to me. And we just got deeper and deeper into this sort of rabbit hole of it was just dark. It was, I cried a lot of the time. Georgia got to the point where it was incredible how quickly it sort of took over everything. It was like this sort of octopus tentacles that just, first it was like the school bus, then it was this, and it was that, then it was, I can't go to school at all. I can't even get out of bed. It got really extreme. And then I listened to this talk. It was Life is Simple, Dick and Bettinger's, that first thing I listened to. And I was listening with Georgia, and I watched her as she just went into this, for the first time, she just fell into this different feeling, this different space. And it was like, this makes sense. Stop looking at feelings and behavior and anxiety. Let's just see what's going on. This is, and it was so simple. That basically your feelings are just your thoughts playing out. Why do we spend a whole time looking at feelings? Let's look at what George is thinking. Let's look at what's going on here. Let's look at what I'm thinking. Let's look at. So I I started to listen more, and I realized I had quite, at that point I had quite an intellectual understanding of this. And so nothing was really changing, because I was always coming from a place of fear. I was still taking it really seriously. I was still like, come on, Georgia, we need to look at what you're thinking in order to change what's going, we know it's coming from your thinking now. But it was still coming from fear. And she could sense that. And then we went away for 4 days, and with Dave and Jen's not here. And on day 2, it was funny, because Georgia, she said to me, she said, we were having such a great time. We were away from it all. And Georgia said, I'm loving it. And we were in a lovely feeling. And she said, but you do know I'm not going to go back to school. And I just, that's a thought. Okay, if you imagine thoughts are like, bubbles or balloons, and you blow air into them, they have no energy of their own. They have no life of their own. It's us. We're the force that we bring thoughts alive. But I didn't really understand. I hadn't understood the nature of thought at that point. And I hadn't felt it. I hadn't felt the nature of thought. And so when she said to me, she just threw a thought out there, which was in the future. It didn't exist. The future doesn't exist. Nothing, it was, and she said it out loud. She said, I'm not going to go back to school. And I went, oh my God. I went into the past. I went into the future. I believed it. I started blowing air into this thought, into this balloon. It got bigger and bigger and bigger. The feelings changed. It's like I connected with this thought, and I lost sight of Georgia again. She was there going, where's Mum gone? I'm dealing with this thought. I'm dealing with this truth that you've just told me, that you're not going to go back to school. It wasn't a truth. It was just a thought. It's just something she just threw out there. If I had just left it alone, then nothing, it would have just leave it alone. Carry on connecting with Georgia. But I didn't. I connected with the thought. She's not going to go back to school. Oh my God. And then we went into this horrible feeling, very dark again, very scary, very serious, very serious. And the next morning, Georgia's, refusing to get out of the car. She's crying. She locked the doors. I'd gone in, more crying, more seriousness, more heaviness. And I said, she's not going to engage. I went in, I was talking to Jen. She's not going to engage with Dave, who's gone out to talk to her. She's locked in that car. She's not going to get out of the car. This was my last hope. I don't know what to do now, because, and Jen's not really engaging with, she knows the nature of thought. She knows what I'm doing. She knows this is all what I'm creating. It's not who I am. This isn't Georgia who she is. She knows, she sees the creation. And then I look out the window. See, in my mind, Georgia's sitting in the car with the doors locked, crying, but it's not what's going on. She's actually got this climbing harness, and she's up a tree. She's a climber. She's in the moment. She's having a great time. And I was like, something, I had this shift. It was almost like at that point, I think that because we'd gone to such I'd lost all hope, I think, the previous night, and I had fallen through fear. I had just kept falling. I'd fallen through fear. And then I had felt this safety net that I never knew existed. It was like I had this massive shift where I saw what I was creating. I saw, and I began to feel the nature of thought. And I began to feel like my okayness, like it doesn't come from outside of me. It doesn't come from, anything that's going on the outside. I'd been outsourcing it to, I'm okay if George is okay. I'm okay if my husband's not stressed. I'm okay if everything on the outside is stable. And that is like building your house on sand. It's not truth. Because whenever something goes on the outside, you're just, you quickly go into fear and seriousness as you try and change it, because you don't feel okay. And then when you realize that you're creating all of this, and your okayness never leaves you, it never leaves you. And Georgia has the same. And I sat there and I just cried with relief. I sat in this cafe afterwards and I was just like, oh my God. I had this moment where I look back and I would probably call it, I don't know, pure consciousness or It doesn't matter what it's called or what we, it's just that I had this moment where I wasn't attached to any thought. I wasn't attached to any belief. All the labels that I'd given Georgia, she's highly sensitive, she's this, it's all really sick, all fell away. All the baggage that I was holding on to, all the weight, all the heaviness, it was just like, it wasn't there anymore. And I was like, oh my God, Georgia's fine. And Georgia, she didn't see what I saw. So she was like, I'm not fine. It's like, no, you are fine. And then we left. It's like, I then have been on this journey for the last year because I'm quite grateful that she didn't see what I saw, because it meant that I then had to find more and more and more simple ways of showing her her true nature, her true self, who she really is, not, beyond the story, when she's caught up in the story. And it's like, I've started to see that as parents, and, it's not just as parents, it's just generally, we're brought up in a society where we think that we have to take life seriously. We have to worry in order to we think, we get confused that worry is love, but it's the polar opposite. Because when I was worrying about Georgia, it's like, because she's a climber, it's like I didn't see the rope. And I was so fearful because I was like, oh my God, she's going to fall. You've got to be careful. And all she heard was judgment, criticism, seriousness. And then I realized that I'm not holding Georgia. I'm not responsible for the rope. Life holds Georgia like the rope. She's being held through life in the same way that I am. And when I point her towards that resilience that she has within her, she feels it. She's not asking me to worry about her. She never asked me to worry about her. She just needs me to be, to remind her of this okayness. Just when I'm connecting with love, when I'm connecting with my true self, beyond the seriousness, beyond the worry, then I connect with this different space within her that knows and reminds her, because she knows this. She knows that she's okay deep down. But when she's in the story and getting stuck in the story and fearful and taking life seriously, then if I do the same, then both of us get caught up in it, and we know what's going on. When I go back within myself, and I just go back within to, my true self, beyond the thoughts, beyond all the stuff that I'm creating, then it's like I'm not in her storm. And then she will fall out of the storm, and then she will connect with her own common sense, her own wisdom that's running through her. But we're constantly, when we're taking life seriously, we're not connecting with it. We're not seeing it. We're not trusting it. We're not trusting the rope that's holding us, life force, whatever we call it. It's just that she's a climber. So that's it's what reminds me. And we are now, I think, your book is it's got such a great title, because you can constantly remind yourself. It's like a wake up. I'm taking life too seriously. It's such a wake up call. When you're taking life too seriously, you can fall out of the story. You can fall into the just being. And then when you're in that space, this reflective, passive, not doing with your thinking, trying to fix. It's much more passive. It's just being, allowing, accepting, seeing that you're taking life too seriously. And then you fall into, connection, joy, common sense, lightheartedness, and it is there for all of us all the time. And I'm going to stop talking now, because I can talk for hours about this.
Oh, thank you, Kate, for that very beautiful and powerful share about your daughter. And I'm not going to say any more to that, because I'm sure Sue is going to build on it with what she shares as well. So I'll go straight to Sue, and then we can have a bit of a discussion and maybe some questions. Sue, would you like to share? Yeah. All right, you're muted. The joys of Zoom strike again.
There we are. First of all, thank you so much for the opportunity. I have hated the opportunity at times to contribute to this book. As I said earlier, when I pressed the button, I thought, oh God, why did you say yes? But anyway, that's all in the past. And seeing the book here, which was I ordered straight away. I think it's a thrilling book. I think it's and everybody's story has something quite precious to share. So just get that out of the way, because I know that you're so modest. And it was funny when Juliet started speaking, and she was saying how she'd found something to write about, which in fact illustrated when she didn't live life seriously. And I'm the polar opposite, because I chose the most traumatic, the most painful and difficult and terrifying period of my life to write about. And actually, I'd be hard pushed to have made the connection that Juliet did. So I could have written about, I'd go into school humming, cheerful. I had a great time, not all the time, obviously, but I had a great time with students in the classroom. I liked my colleagues, I liked the school, etc. But it never occurred to me I'd write about that, because it doesn't seem to fit. And I really, really appreciate the insight that you had when you were telling your story. But yeah, so what would I say about all of this? It was truly a real breakdown. It was just not only for my daughter, but I think I joined her, and I echo everything that Jan said. We've talked many a time about our relationship with our offspring, and we normally talk about the one offspring, don't we, that for each of us that's been the years and years of challenge. And also, I can echo what you've been talking about, Kate, so clearly. So what would I say? I would say that coming across an understanding such as this was truly transformative. Having, my piece I write about, I didn't know I was serious. I'm not sure that I would have used that expression. I think I would have said, well, I'm a conscientious, I put everything into, being a parent, and then kept failing, because I set this bar really high. And then the biggest failure of all, felt like the worst thing that could have ever happened. I think it was the worst thing that could have ever happened. And we just got plunged into an awaking nightmare. And it seemed that it took away our ability to sleep. It took away our ability to function with any sense of happiness or joy. It was just sucked out. And it was all I thought about. It was all I concentrated on. And all that I continued to fail at. I couldn't fix my daughter. And the guilt, I was thinking today, what were those emotions? Well, there was guilt, and I felt panic. I felt totally out of my depth. And then I realized today that there was so much shame attached to it as well. I'd gone into motherhood as that thing, well, I know I'm going to be really good at this. This is my salvation. I'm going to have children. I'm going to just show that I'm not repeating things from the past, and I will have this wonderful, laid back, playful. I mean, who was I kidding? I had nothing to draw on that was going to help me do that. And as I say, it was talk about outside in. I had this sort of impenetrable barrier between my outside and my inside. I was really I was a high functioning wreck, really, and anxiety and seriousness, and always on alert. How was I doing? How was I being? Etc. That's all. That's sort of, it's funny to talk about it now, because the book has brought that back, but in a way that I can see it now as if it wasn't me almost. And I was thinking about, well, what's the difference then? What's the difference, and what difference could it have made? And I think the difference it could have made was that I think I would still have cried, and I would have been sad, and I would have been upset, and I would have felt enormous empathy and sorrow and etc. But there would be a difference that I loaded on top of all of that. What Kate referred to really is I loaded up onto it all of the stories, all of the accumulated stories, and they were all premised on one misunderstanding that I thought that when I thought things, they were true. Otherwise, I wouldn't be thinking them, because that wouldn't make any sense. So everything I thought appeared in my life as truth. And of course, as we now know, that every thought we have has a feeling flavor. So then, so there's the thought, and then you're swept along on these feelings, and they keep changing. And I longed to understand. People would say, "Oh, I trust your feelings." And I think, which one? Which one? Tell me which one. Because they change all the time. And I had no idea why that would be the case. So for me, it was transformative. And my first weekend was with the wonderful, well, not quite the first weekend, but when I jumped onto training as early as I possibly could, and we call it training loosely, really, with Dr. Roger Mills. And I think that was in about 2003 or 4. When was the first conference?
It was 11 or 12, it's probably 12 years ago. 12 years ago.
Okay, so maybe it was about 2005. And I remember sitting there and just being stunned. This single piece of information that my thoughts weren't facts, they weren't truths, they were potentials. And that actually, I do get some choice over which thoughts I bring to life. I run with, I take seriously. And that was like, I think it was Jan that said that, it's like big news. It was like startling. How could I have got that far along in my life? And with that, it just seemed crazy. And it was also like, oh my God, someone's opened a window. Oh, there's this fresh air, there's this, I was being revived. And then, of course, because I am, conscientious and serious, I watched myself like a hawk. I was thinking, now thoughts, feelings, yes. So is this a good thought? Is this a positive thought? Is this a helpful thought? Is this a wise thought? And in the end, that was really tiring and serious too. And then I think for me, it was a question of, a bit like Jan, really, it kind of, that initial thing was enough. To see that was enough. And then I got involved and wanted to make myself understand, as opposed to what I've come to realize is that life invites you to understand, because the bits you don't understand keep revisiting and revisiting and revisiting until you do, because life, I think, is for me, in a way that sort of illustrates how life really is a gift. It just, the things that I stub my toe on, I'm going to keep stubbing my toe on until I realize, oh, I put a stone in the way. And I keep doing it. So the difference, again, it would be that loading on of my stories and my thoughts over and above what was actually, there were facts to the case she was sectioned, there were facts to the case she tried to take her own life. And, that's mind-blowing to think that actually happened now. It feels like that was another life. And I wish it hadn't happened, because I think it was very painful. I think it's changed the course of her life. But when I look at what did it bring to our family? Well, first of all, it cracked us all open. And then I see that in a way that she's brought us great depth of understanding and appreciation by just being her. She just doesn't compromise. She speaks her mind. She never, ever criticizes. And there's me criticizing her, and she can't help the way that she was. I'm criticizing her and going home and crying. Why was I so critical? And getting caught up in it. And over time, that feels like I haven't done anything. I set out to do so much and so much fixing. It's never been about that. It's been about more and more appreciation for the fact that I'm the one that chooses the derailing thoughts. I'm the one that chooses to see things through a particular lens until I remember that it is just simply a lens, and then it clears itself. Sometimes it's because I forget, and sometimes it's because I remember what's happening. And yes, so I'm so appreciative of it, but it just never is too late for anybody. Doesn't matter. I believe that it doesn't matter what your situation is. This is so hopeful and so nourishing, and it's never the end of the story. It's just never the end of. And I was thinking, well, I put that piece in there, and it felt I didn't want there to be any sense of it being like, oh, so now I'm okay. Put the last full stop in, and there's the great story. Lucky old me. We came through, and I think since then, endless things happen. Challenges, family relationships, the dog had to have 2 knee operations, and I imagine I knew what this creature was thinking and feeling, and then I'd realize, no, that's what you're thinking and feeling. So I think I'm happy to talk about any aspect of it, but I think it would be nice to. Are you going to open it up?
I'm conscious of time, but I'm going to open it up. But thank you so much for sharing, so much about what you'd seen, and it really, and everyone has pointed to so much richness in the conversation, and so there is so much that we could talk about, but I'm going to open up. So if anyone got a burning question that they would like to ask the panel, put your hand up. I'm just flicking through to see if anyone has a burning question. Okay, I can't see him. So is there any of the panel want to say anything to what anyone else has said? Because it's 10 to 9. Let's try and finish by 9:05, because I think that's fair to people. So does any of the panel want to say anything to what anyone else has said? And then I'll wrap up with a nice reflection at the end. So do any of you want to say anything? Juliet?
I will.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you really to Sue and Jan and Kate, as your stories, I've read them in the book, but hearing you speak here, I think we were talking before we came on this call that the honesty that the way people have opened up and made themselves vulnerable in this book is extraordinary. And Sue, I just want to say you're braver than me, because I went to where I didn't, where I wasn't serious. But it's just hearing you speak, and for the people who haven't yet read the book, you can probably gather there's some what look like very serious life situations that people have talked about in this book, and yet the book is so uplifting. And hearing you speak, Jan and Sue and Kate, I just got a beautiful sense of what's possible. So I just want to really thank you all for talking tonight.
Thank you. And I just want to add to what Juliet said, because I was in another session like this, and someone asked, well, don't you have to be in really serious circumstances to see something? And it was funny, because when I talk in my chapter, I talk about work and how I took it all very seriously, and I was very wanted to do everything, do the right thing all the time, and I didn't trust myself, and I didn't trust in the unknown. And to me, I didn't see that as a serious circumstance. I just saw that as day-to-day life. But this person who was listening to us thinking was all our experiences were serious circumstances. And I think it's really I think it's helpful to point out that it's not just it's not about people's circumstances, or that you can see that we can see this in day-to-day life, in every aspect of day-to-day life. And you don't have to have been in a difficult situation to see this or gain be helped by seeing beyond your serious thinking. And for me, I'll put my hand up, I was also a very anxious, neurotic maybe person. And I used to think if I was serious about something, that means I had to be really serious about it, and it was worth, you know, getting really neurotic about, even if it was stupid like bank statement, just stupid like anything official that would trigger me. I would habitual thinking about it. And to me, if I had habitual, you know, if I was getting triggered and getting heart palpitations, something, well, that must be really serious. And actually what I've learned is the opposite, that if I'm having serious thinking about something, actually it's my body's kind of telling me that that's what's happening. And how I saw that is that I used to listen to a lot of these talks because I used to work in a centre that taught, but I didn't really get it. I would listen and it just washed over my head, and it was all, you know, but when what happened to me was, once I was on a bus and I was feeling, I suddenly started to thinking about, had I locked the door? That was a habitual thinking that used to get my palpitations going. Had I locked the door? And I got really paranoid about it. And then I just noticed that actually I was actually really tired when I was thinking about that. And maybe I was just having this serious thinking because I was tired. And, you know, just like that, it went. And it was really funny because then after that, I'd have other times when I was like cooking dinner for 15 people where I'd be banging and crashing and swearing. And then I'd notice that, oh, here we go again. And to me, it was really in day-to-day silly, laughable things, but it's been very gradual. So it's just to show it. I just wanted to bring that into the conversation, just in case it's helpful for people listening, that it really is, it's something we all know. And then we get caught up in our thinking. That's all we're talking about. We're just talking about our day-to-day lives, and when we get caught up in our intellect and our thinking, and then when we drop out of it. So before I sort of have a nice reflection to end, does anyone want to add anything from you guys? Do you want to add anything? Okay. So what
I'm going to quickly say, just one moment, how just that revealed the absolute power of this in pretty much an ordinary situation, having dinner. And for some reason, my thinking just went away, really. It quietened completely. And I was just sitting at the table, I had my daughter, her husband, my husband. And I looked across at her and seriously almost didn't recognize her. I mean, she'd been there all afternoon and we were having a dinner, and it was as if I was seeing her for the first time. And it was because I was then conscious of just how much I was still carrying some thoughts and some stories, and that created her literally for me. And in that instant, and it's happened with my husband when I've been really, really cross with him. I haven't, you know, I've looked at him and thought, oh, I don't even like the way you look. And he doesn't change, you know, he looks the same every day. So it like seeing the visual thing that brings more of that seeming truth. It's just astonishing. That's enough. I stopped.
No, I love that, Sarah. And I think that is so true, isn't it? That how we have fixed ideas, how people certain are, we get fixed ideas, and then actually to see that we're constantly changing our views of people and of circumstances and of life constantly is really helpful. And so I love that you shared that. That's really powerful. And I just thought I'd just end on I put at the end of the book lessons from creation of this book, because to me it really has been in a journey in taking my life less seriously. And when I started putting the book together, I said I had no idea how to do it or where this journey would lead, and I still don't, and I really don't. But I felt compelled to create it anyway, and I'm compelled to, you know, carry on these conversations anyway. But to me, the book has been an ongoing lesson in taking my thinking less seriously. And I won't read the whole thing, but I'll just read things that I think are pertinent to tonight. So, in being led to my soul and not my head, and seeing where that leads. In coming up against my I'm going to get in trouble, fearful thinking, and not getting stuck in that. In waiting for how to respond best to respond to people from a neutral place rather from an uncomfortable loaded place. And I think quite a few of us have talked about that tonight. In coming up against myself over and over again, whatever myself is in that moment. In juggling my life as a wife, a mother, an employee, a volunteer, with being the creator of this book. in listening to my body screaming at me to slow down and focus on the day-to-day before I can continue with the other demands of my time and attention. I think we can all relate to that. In trusting that words and required actions will come to me when they're ready, and no amount of thinking about them is going to bring them forth more quickly. In hearing my negative self-talk and recognizing that I'm my own worst enemy when I constantly berate myself for the smallest misdemeanors. In learning to go beyond my desperate need to please everyone and not unintentionally upset them. In seeing I have no idea how others view me. In seeing time and time again, I'm not in control. In knowing I have everything I need. In trusting myself. In following the path of love and connection. In just being. I wish you all a life less serious. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been really special. We've had a really beautiful, and I hope you've enjoyed our conversation. And I hope you enjoy the book. And if you do, please put reviews on Amazon and share it with friends. I think it makes quite a nice gift, but maybe that's me. But please do, yeah, and give us your feedback. And if you want to hear more from us, we're really at the start of this, so we're really open to ideas. As I said, I'm just following my nose on this. I think we all are. So you can get in touch with me on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and yeah, I would love your feedback. And thank you so much for joining us, and we've really enjoyed your energy, and thank you for the panel for your very honest and beautiful reflections and feedback. Thank you. Lovely to see you, and thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'll
Thank you.
stop recording.
Thank you.
Thank you.